Hey everybody, Justin from Playing Board Games here, and today I'm here to talk about the Taboo List. This is something that I've seen in our comments and on our Discord a few times, where people are asking, what the heck is the Taboo List? When should I start playing with the Taboo List? What cards are on the Taboo List? So I thought, let's make a video discussing this, what the Taboo List is, answering all those questions, as well as kind of like a little preamble, because pretty soon I imagine the cards I'm going to be talking about here are going to be obsolete. Our last Taboo List was June 28th, 2021, so we're due for another one coming up. But I think rather than like making a video talking about that Taboo List, summing up the Taboo List while Travis, Bryn, and I are going to talk about the changes, instead we're just here to talk. I'm here to just talk about what the Taboo List is. I'm going to talk about what cards are currently on the Taboo List, but when the update comes, you know there's going to be another video coming out, but I didn't want to talk about the Taboo List and explain it all there. This video is just about what the Taboo List is and why you should consider playing with it, why you should consider not playing with it, depending on the type of gamer that you are. So, the Taboo List, this is actually from the FAQ. So this is going to explain it a lot better than my rambling will explain it, so I'm just going to read exactly what you can find in the FAQ, which is going to be down in the description. The updated FAQ as of the time that this video came out. So, the list of taboos is a list of ARKHAM Horror, the card game cards, with optional deck building restrictions or text changes. This list is designed to craft a healthy balance between investigator power and scenario difficulty, and to enforce shifts in deck building environments over time. Adhering to the list of taboos is completely optional. Investigators are not forced to adhere to the restrictions on this list, but if an investigator chooses to do so, they must do so in full. An investigator cannot pick and choose which restrictions to use. So the taboo list is essentially just balancing. It's hard to make a card game. It's hard to make a card game with this many cards. Sometimes things are a lot different in testing than they are actually putting into paper. So the taboo list allows the designers to react to these things as they see them played in the community, as they have some more experience with them, as they continue to play test with new cards, and they think, this is not working as we intended. It is either too strong or too weak, or in some cases, broken, right? So the taboo list is not like them, it's you don't want to look at it as like it's like mistakes that they made, because as I said, designing a card game is really tough. So instead, the taboo list is just tweaking and balancing like you would in like a video game. Like if you've played Hearthstone, Legends of Runeterra, they constantly balance their cards to make them better. And as I said, this includes bringing down power level and bringing power level up. So the taboo list essentially just alters cards to make them fit better. It also provides some replayability and some changes to things for players like me who have played a lot of ARKHAM, but we're going to get to that. The other thing is that's very important about the taboo list, or as they call it in the FAQs, as I just learned today, the list of taboos. I don't know where the switch happened, but it's completely optional. However, if you want to play by the actual official rules, if you play with one taboo, you play with all taboos. And notably, if an investigator chooses to do so, they must do so in full. So I believe you could actually, like with new players, they could play without taboo and you could play with taboo, and it still works with the rules according to the taboo list, or the list of taboos. So, what are the types of taboos that can exist on the taboo list? So once again, seasoned players, they'll know exactly what I'm going to talk about. Even like players have been playing for a few months probably know what all these are. But if you do not know anything about what the taboo list is, there are 3 types of taboos currently that exist in the taboo list. There is chained and unchained. So this is going to be, once again, reading exactly from the FAQ, because they'll explain it better than I could while rambling. So, cards from this list have their experience cost increased or decreased by the amount listed below. Chained, up. Unchained is down, I believe. Each card's level remains the same. Only the experience spent to purchase the card is altered. This experience adjustment should also be taken into account when upgrading to or from a card that is on this list. So, what they mean by the level stays the same. That an example we're going to see in the future is Drawing Thin. It is chained to have its experience cost increased when you are buying the card, but in your deck, it's still considered to be a level 0 card, meaning that you can grab it with scrounge for supplies. I'm pretty sure that is all true and nothing I said was a lie. I was just pulling that all out of my, my behind there. Next one here, we got mutated. Cards from this list have additional or altered text as described below. So these ones have changes to the card text themselves, which I'm going to show as we get later on as well. And then the last type of taboo is forbidden. Cards from this list cannot be included in your deck. These cards are banned. Any card that is forbidden is banned, essentially. It's like what you see in Magic the Gathering when they ban a card in a standard format or a modern format or any of the formats that exist. You just basically cannot play with it if you are following the taboo list. Again, playing with the taboo list is completely optional, so you can play these cards. And you also, when you play with if you play without the taboo list, you're not playing with like a broken pool of cards. Because odds are, if you're playing without the taboo list, you're not going to be doing some of the things that caused these cards to be mutated or forbidden. You're just playing to have a good time, and in that case, you can probably just ignore the taboo list. So, here's the next question that we should have to answer is, when the heck should I use the taboo list? Using the taboo list is completely optional, so when to use it is personal preference. There are a lot more cases of when you should or should not, and even then, should and should not are the wrong words. When you could or don't have to use the taboo list, it all comes down to personal player preference. But here's a few points that I considered while I was making this video. So start using that taboo list after you've played with the printed cards a few times and want a change of pace. This is something that for us, when we were playing ARKHAM, we played with these cards a lot. I'm lucky where I get to play a lot of ARKHAM, so a taboo list allows me to not have to always use a certain weapon. Like, for example, Machete was a level 0 weapon that we put in all of our decks. When it was chained, it started to see less play, and the weapon, while still good, is not an auto-include. Now, you may be thinking, Justin, can't you just make these stipulations yourself and choose not to play with Machete? Yes, but at the same time, people play games to win, and sometimes there's types of players who can't not. Like, they have to. They have to play the best deck that they can, and the taboo list forces them to think differently because they're still playing the game in trying to win, but they have their environment in which they build changes. So if you've played for a bit and you found yourself falling into the same routine, consider adding the taboo list to your games to change your deck building environment. You can also start using the taboo list to take advantage of the cards that were buffed. So if there's some cards that are on the taboo list that you think, man, that sounds fun to play with, try it out, right? As it was stated earlier, if you want to play the taboo list officially, if you do one, you must do them all. So you can't take the good and then leave the bad out. But if you are curious about how a card plays when buffed because it interests you, try it out, right? And also, like, of this note, when you start playing Tabooed, you don't need to always play Tabooed. You can go back. You can just, it's your game. Do what interests you. Start using the taboo list after you feel as though you have a better handle on the game and you want to go deeper into it in your collection. So this is when, this kind of goes back to the first point, but this is also, I'm going to say that I recommend, and what we recommend on the channel in our new player guides, is for new players to not use the taboo list when they're just starting out. The game is already daunting enough as it is. You don't need to add an extra layer of it. You don't need to I got my Knight of the Zealot set up. I'm ready to play the Gathering. Let me just go to Google pretty quick and search taboo list so I know what I need to do, right? Just play the game a few times, and then when you start to feel you have a better handle on the game, and you want to play with the official taboo list, consider it. It's just an option. You can immediately start using that taboo list when you begin playing. As I said, this is not like the channel's recommendation, but heck, it's your game. Do what you want, right? If you want to set up Knight of the Zealot, you got the Gathering already, and you want to turn to Google and find it, freaking do it, right? Like, just go for it. It's your game, and what matters most is that you're having fun, and if you want to start with the taboo list right away, don't let us deter you. Even though we don't say you should, don't let us stop you. And on that note, you don't even need to use the taboo list at all. If you like playing ARKHAM without the taboo list, you are not playing a different game if you're playing without the taboo list. It is still ARKHAM. You're not playing less of a game. Likewise, the people playing with the taboo list are not playing more of a game. It's just a different environment of the same game. So don't feel like you need to use the taboo list if you are just enjoying Arkham as it is. It's just an optional rule set that you can play with, but don't feel like you have to. What cards are on the taboo list? Let's keep this sucker going. So we're going to try to go through these pretty quick because, as I said, these are probably being changed pretty soon. We're probably going to see an announcement of a new taboo list in the near future, I'm hoping. I hope to knock on wood that it doesn't come out before this video comes out, because that I would have egg on my face. But the Chained Unchained. So Machete, +1 experience. Pathfinder, +2 experience. Switchblade, +1 experience. Higher Education, +3 experience. So once again, this just changes the experience cost, not the level of the card. So Machete is still a level 0 weapon. It's level 0 asset. It just costs 1 experience to put into your deck. As you see, these are kind of just like, this is like a simple form of balancing. And one thing that's really nice about the taboo list is that it actually keeps it relatively simple. The Chained and Unchained, you don't need to worry about that outside of deck building. Otherwise, the card is just as printed, which is very helpful. But as you can see with all these ones, these cards were just a bit too strong at their experience level, so they added some experience, or in the case of Higher Education, doubled the experience. Keeping it going for the Chained and Unchained, we have Streetwise, +3, Scrapper, +1, Flamethrower, +1, and Drawing Thin, +3. So once again, cards were just a bit too strong at their experience cost and made them a little bit more reasonable at the rates that you should buy them at. Last ones here, Mr. Rook went up to 4, Unknowledge's Power went to 2, and the Necronomicon went to 8. Looking at it like that. 5 + 3 = 8. Once again, same things here. There's no Unchained cards currently. I thought there used to be. They might have removed it or changed it or something like that. But currently, there are only Chained cards. Going into the Mutated, this is where things get a bit more specific. So Dr. Milan, he now exhausts after you successfully investigate. This is one that he's a core set card. He's really good. And this is the one that we point to. Like, it's a really good balance. He's still very strong with his taboo. He was very strong as printed, but he's still strong. So it's like one of those things where it's just like taking him down a level. Elusive now reads, disengage from each enemy engage with you and move to a connecting location with no enemies. So as opposed to moving to any revealed location, you just can move to a connecting location with no enemies. So same kind of effect, just once again tuned down to being a more reasonable for the rate at which the card is at. Rex Murphy is a reaction ability, gains limit once per round. Very good change. Still a very strong investigator. He was absolutely wild when he was as printed, so that's a nice change there. Delve Too Deep is limit 2 copies of it in the victory display. This is just to keep it reasonable, right? Like that's the thing about these. So far, we're looking at minor changes that it doesn't like kill the card, it just tunes the card down. And we're going to also see, in this case, some tuning the cards up. Springfield. This attack may target a non-elite enemy up to 1 location away from its standard range, ignoring aloof and retaliate keywords. So this is add some new text, add some more functionality to the card. So as opposed to tuning it down, this is an example of a card that was buffed or tuned up as part of its mutation. Quick thinking, nice and easy, max once per round. Just to keep it reasonable. Once again, you're going to hear me saying that a lot for these taboo lists. They're not looking at like redesigning a powerful card. They're not looking at killing a powerful card. They're looking at turning a powerful card down a bit. Ace in the Hole, max once per round. Easy peasy. Sleight of Hand ability now reads, put a level 0 to 3 item asset into play from your hand. This card has seen a lot of taboo changes. And it's just because like it's a strong card and there's a lot of crazy things you can do with it. This is, I think, probably the healthiest version of it, and I think they've absolutely nailed this taboo, but I'm expecting somehow for it to get tabooed again just because of tradition. They just do it every time. They're just like, let's see what we can do to sleight of hand this time. But this card specifically was problematic with some of the high experience cost cards, and then it's in a very good place where it is right now. Key of Yeast gained Exceptional. Card was really strong, so Exceptional means you can have one of them in your deck, and its experience cost is doubled. This one has probably seen one of the biggest hits, but the card is very strong, and I think it warrants it. I haven't played with it since it's been tabooed, but also I probably wouldn't play with it when it was 5 experience because the card is just like a bit too boring in a multiplayer setup. All In removes itself from the game. Nice and simple to avoid degenerate things. Here are two buffs. So Scroll of Secrets is actually probably one of the biggest buffs that a card has seen on the Taboo list. I know there's sitting a Telescopic Sight right next to it, but it's not exactly an impressive change that we see here in Telescopic Sight. No offense, Telescopic Sight, I'm sorry. But Scroll of Secrets' action ability has now become Lightning Bolt abilities for all 3 versions of the card. It's a really good change, and this is a good example of one where I was like, from my points earlier, saying how you might want to go to the tabooed version to play the buffed up version of the card, and I think Scroll of Secrets is a really nice buff on the Taboo list. Telescopic Sight attached asset cannot be used to attack enemies engaged with you. So it loses that text. So now you can actually, even though you don't need to like always shoot down the sight, because it's still a gun and you can still shoot things that are in close range with you. It's a good taboo change. We have a bunch here coming up that are just going to be removing them from the game just to avoid degenerate things. This includes Pendant of the Queen and You Catastrophe as seen on the screen. Ace of 3 Aces is another one that has it so it's removed from the game just to stop degenerate things. The Winchester has got a buff, so it now reads action, spend 1 ammo, fight. You get +2 fist for this attack. If a Chaos token with a non-negative modifier is revealed during this attack deals +2 damage. So now this has a lot more synergy with, for example, Blessed tokens. That's where the Holy Gun, the Nun with the Gun Sister Mary build comes from, the changes that came in this. Because as you can see in the original, it was +1, 0, and Elder Sign, but now that technically also, at this point now, includes Blesses. A non-negative modifier is revealed. Last 2 cards here. Once again, these cards, as Travis says in these videos, that these cards should have been printed like this. And going forward, I imagine we're going to see cards printed like this with this text on it. They just remove themselves from the game because the effect is very powerful to loop and do multiple times. So it just removing itself from the game is just a good balancing, because they're good effects if you do them once or twice if you have 2 copies, but as soon as you do it 3, 4, 7, 10 times, it becomes a little bit easy to win the game. And the only forbidden card, Double or Nothing. Yeah, this card, it might not seem that powerful, but there's a lot of gross things you can do with it. A user in our Discord channel said that if you want to know an easy place to try to break things, Parallel Skids has a test for 0 that he can do printed on his Investigator card. So there's a lot of things where you can commit a lot of very relevant cards to a skill test and then double it and then resolve all of those effects twice. So it's just a very strong card that was able to be broken, and they've made it banned. And they said, I remember in their one of their summaries, that they've tried a lot of things internally to see if they can make this card work, but unfortunately it's just too strong if you try to break it. So they have just banned it. They could not find a thing that worked, a taboo that worked, so it is just forbidden. And those are all the cards on the current taboo list. So our last question we're going to talk about here is, how the heck do I remember all the tabooed cards? Because you only need to remember the tabooed cards in your own deck, don't worry about tabooed cards that you cannot play. So you don't need to memorize all the tabooed cards. You just don't. It's just not feasible when you're just starting out. Once you get into the game more, and you've played a lot more, and you can at that point where you start remembering cards just by their art, you'll probably have a better handle on just remembering what tabooed cards do, because they will be built into your mind, just like how you can look at Dr. Milan Christopher and know exactly what he does. Eventually, when you play with the taboo list enough, that'll just change to the new version of Dr. Milan that's in your head. That's what happens with Travis Byrne and I. We just learn it by experience, right? Like when you're first starting out, don't try to memorize all of them. In fact, don't even try to memorize them. Just get them, know the ones that are in your deck, and that's what's important. Luckily, chained and unchained cards only matter for upgrading, and the majority of the mutated taboos are easy to remember with a bit of gameplay. And Forbidden is really easy because you can basically just turn that card in your binder backwards so you can never even look at it. However, with all this said, Fantasy Flight has made a PDF of printable taboo cards, and you can find a link to that PDF in the video's description, unless for some reason I forgot to include it, Or alternatively, if you're watching this in the future and the taboo list and the FAQ have been updated, please let me know in the comments and I will update those. Because I do read the comments. Even on year-old videos, I still read the comments. So hopefully this video has helped you understand what the taboo list is and why you may or may not want to play with it. The big thing for this is, again, knowing if the taboo list is good for you. So hopefully I've helped you figure that out. I really hope I do. We'll be back very soon for another Arkham Horror video. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel if you've not already subscribed. Huge shout out and thank you to all of our patrons down below. We appreciate your support. It allows us to continue to make Arkham Horror content while also helping us fund the new expansions and also just more content for all of you. So if you want to help support the channel, you can support by subscribing, commenting, joining the Patreon, or clicking that thanks button down below. You can give us a little tip if you want to give us a $2 tip or a $50 tip if you're feeling like very Jeff Bezos-y. You know what? I'm just happy you're here. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great one. And as always, a GG's.